Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to New Zealand once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So we're going to have a look at another collaboration beer today, and out of the two breweries involved in this one, I'm not sure which brewery can be termed the home brewery and which one can be termed the away brewery, because one of them is a kind of gypsy brewery that move around all the time, whereas the other one is the brewery that actually brewed the beer. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. But the brewery that brewed the beer has featured on the channel a number of times before, albeit not since 2018. They were one of the first New Zealand craft breweries that I discovered, and I really loved their stuff back in the day, so nice to return to these guys after quite some time. Whereas the other brewery are quite an interesting operation. They like to go around and brew things in different places, and they've got very experimental recipes that span quite a lot of different styles. So yeah, I think this one could be really quite interesting. But the beer itself is a style that I very much enjoy. It's got a little twist to it that I don't think I've had within this particular style category before, and I've heard good things about this particular beer too. So needless to say, very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Always nice to introduce New Zealand breweries to you here on the channel as well. So yeah, hopefully this is another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to Warkworth, which is to the north of Auckland in New Zealand, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Wired Brewing Company. But this one is brewed in collaboration with Small Gods, who are a sort of gypsy, nomadic, contract, whatever you want to call them, brewery. The beer itself is called Desperate Glory. It comes in at 8% ABV, and they're describing this one as an Oude Bruine, or I guess you can also term it as like a kind of Flanders Red. These styles are very similar in terms of their flavour profile, but this one has been soured in barrels with Keemoon tea. So yeah, this should be quite an interesting one, this. They say it's inspired by Flanders Fields, the poem. So yeah, it was Wilfred Owen. We studied that in school, actually. One of the things that was kind of interesting in English class. Not many things were, to be honest. But yeah, 8% Oude Bruine, kind of Flanders Reddish type ale, this one, from New Zealand. And I think this might well be the first Kiwi example of this style that I'm trying on the channel too. So there's another first for you. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. The Desperate Glory and 8% Flanders Red Ale from Small Gods and Wired, both of New Zealand. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Wired Brewing Company, and my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Small Gods. Very first time they're featuring on the channel, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the New Zealand playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because we do get a decent selection of Kiwi beers up here in Hong Kong, and hopefully that continues. But yeah, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and talk a little bit about the breweries. I think we'll start with Wired Brewing in this case, since they are the brewery that brewed this one. So yeah, Wired Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Warkworth, which is to the north of Auckland in the northern part of New Zealand, and the brewery was founded by the nomadic Dane Soren Eriksson, who set up permanent roots in Marlborough in New Zealand along with his wife Monique. So Soren spent some time studying in Perth over in Western Australia, and he was a known regular at the Little Creatures brew pub there, Perth and Fremantle, Rio as it's known, is kind of the birthplace of the Australian craft beer scene from what I understand. But he moved to New Zealand in 2006 after completing his biochemistry masters in 2005, and he met his wife Monique, who is Kiwi, in Bangladesh. But at one stage he was given a Cooper's home brewing kit by her, and this sparked a love of brewing, and then they agreed that they would open a brew pub together at some point. So he left his research activities in 2008 and then went to work at Renaissance Brewing in Blenheim to gain some experience and kind of learn how running a brewery and how the industry works. But Soren soon discovered that maintaining a brewery is a hugely demanding task, and so he decided to go down the route of gypsy brewing, and for a period most of the 8 Wired beers were brewed at Renaissance in Blenheim, and also some of them at Steam Brewing in Auckland as well. But the first 8 Wired beer was produced in 2009, and the name of the brewery is taken from the number 8 gauge wire that was initially used in electric fences and things like that. But it became hugely versatile, and it's supposed to be, the use of this name is supposed to be inspired by the Kiwi can-do spirit and ingenuity that they have. From Soren's perspective. But in 2013 they set up their own brewery in Warkworth to the north of Auckland, and over the years they've continued to expand this facility. They have a second site 10 minutes away in Matakana, and this facility houses their tap room, which boasts 20 taps, and also houses what could be the largest barrel program in the southern hemisphere. It's got 7 fodders in there that range from 1,500 to 4,000 litres, and they've also got about 200 regular 225 litre barrels, many of them wine from what I understand, because New Zealand is one of the biggest producers of wine in the world. But in March 2024 it was announced that the brewery would be put up for sale because Soren and Monique felt they needed to take a break, and they also wanted to go travelling with their children before they got too old. And they did say they were open to remaining involved in the company going forward, but they didn't want to be the ones kind of doing the majority of the work, I guess you could say. They basically wanted to take a step back but still be involved to a smaller extent. So yeah, we'll just need to see how that progresses. It's a bit of a shame that the founders kind of feel they want to step back a bit, but it's for very respectable reasons, of course. But yeah, hopefully 8 Wired will continue. And as of July 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 280 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, a load of different styles from these guys. Back in the days it was mainly the IPAs and the Imperial Stouts and things like that we were getting from these guys over in Scotland, and yeah, they were always pretty damn good actually. But there's a few other beers that I do want to try and review from these guys over the next little while. The Ice Stout is one that I would love to try, and I have seen that can floating around here in Hong Kong. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about 8 Wired Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to Small Gods then, and as I say, these guys are completely new to me. So yeah, Small Gods, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Auckland, New Zealand, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Luke White and Matt Eates. So the two apparently just met by chance one evening when Matt was on a night out with his friends and Luke was working behind the bar, and they talked for ages, and essentially Matt asked Luke if he needed someone to come and work with him, and he called him the next day, and that was where everything kind of took off. But Luke is originally from England. He studied photography in Nottingham over there, but he also worked for a few years in this industry, and previously spent some years working in the British Air Force as an aircraft mechanic. But he's a well-known beer enthusiast in Auckland. He is involved in Beer Jerk, which is a beer import, retail, events and subscription company, online a lot of it. The Auckland Beer Mile was his kind of brainchild as well, and he's also involved with Text Beer, which is an online service that offers deals from local breweries for beer by text. It seems quite interesting. I'd love to see it in action. But Matt, on the other hand, originally studied drama, film and television in London, and he also took a brewing course at Massey University in Palmerston North in New Zealand. But originally he was working in sales and marketing both in Australia and New Zealand, and then he began to work for Brothers Beer in Auckland doing their marketing before going on to work for Beer Jerk. But he took his his brewing course in 2019, and then in 2020, Small God started their brewing operations, and he's been the head brewer ever since, while also working for Pacific Coast Beverages as their head of sales and marketing. But the name Small Gods is taken from Luke's early days of home brewing, when he and a friend named their plastic fermenter Small Gods, which was a reference to one of the Terry Pratchett novels, from what I understand. But this brewery basically operates as a gypsy, contract, whatever you want to call it, brewery, and many of their recipes are based on historical recipes and from concepts from poetry, art, magazines, books, album covers, mythology, history, all these kind of things. But the first beer they produced was produced at Double Vision in Wellington, and this was based on what was called a mume, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that they discovered in the book The Diary of Samuel Pepys, and it was this big 12% really bitter thing apparently, and this of course was released mainly through beer jerk and things like that. But they've got their own tap room in Auckland on Eden Terrace. This place was previously known as Fridge and Flagon, but prior to this, Beer Jerk had a bar that was called the Beer Jerk Bumper, quite close to where the Small Gods tap room is now, and it was here that Matt met Luke. But this closed in 2019, and Fridge and Flagon would open at their current location in 2020, and this place boasts 12 taps from what I've seen. But as of July 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, Small Gods have released 50 different kinds of beer, and yeah, they seem to be doing a whole variety of different things. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about them. If you want to learn more about Small Gods, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that to keep up to date with the latest goings on. And of course, if you're watching from New Zealand and you're interested in getting some craft beer, then Beer Jerk is somewhere that you probably have heard of already. If not, go and check it out. So yeah, that is everything we need to talk about in the history section of this video. A little bit longer, because we have two quite interesting breweries involved here. But let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty simple. I guess this is meant to symbolise, you know, the digging in the trenches of the First World War, and Desperate Glory, of course, is simply because the First World War was just a bit pointless when you go and study in history. We did a lot of that in school. But you can see the top on this one is obviously the 8 Wired Brewing Company symbol, and you can see the Small Gods and 8 Wired stuff on the side there. It does tell you a little bit about the beer here as well. As I mentioned earlier, this one is 8% kind of Oude Bruine Flanders Red type ale, this one, and it's soured in barrels with Keemoon tea, which could be quite interesting. But Desperate Glory is a sour brown ale inspired by Flanders fields. The base is 3 on a match, a rich and complex Belgian amber ale with notes of dates, brown sugar and sweet spice. This spent a year resting in bourbon barrels to bring out rich oak and vanilla notes alongside a complex, funky tartness. We then carefully blended this with Chinese Keemoon tea to add a light floral character with hints of tobacco and unsweetened cocoa. And it says, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest, children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. I think it's like right and fitting to die for your country, something like that, if I remember that. But yeah, that's from the Wilfred Owen poem Dulce et decorum est, which was written in 1918. If I remember rightly, he was killed just a few weeks before the war actually ended. So yeah, a bit of a sad story with Wilfred Owen. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what is going to have in store for us. I'm very curious about this one. My first beer from 8 Wired in, what, 6 years? Something like that. I'm sure it was 2018, the last one that I reviewed from these guys. 375ml bottle, this one incidentally. But yeah, there we go. I have to say that looks pretty nice. Or am I telling you lies? This one's a half litre, sorry, not 375. I thought it was a bit big in my hand for a 375. But yeah, anyway, I have to say that looks very, very nice. And there's not much in the way of sediment at the bottom of this bottle as well either. So yeah, this beer looks absolutely lovely. You can see that it's poured with just over a half finger of a frothy, I would say light beige coloured head. There are 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the side of the underneath of the head there. But yeah, you can see the head on this one, a little bit kind of medium-sized bubbles underneath, but it's got kind of foamier ones just up on the head there. But you can see it's poured this lovely kind of coppery colour actually. I think to describe this beer as a copper colour is pretty accurate, to be honest. But yeah, one or two little bits of sediment particle floating around in it, which is to be expected, but the colour of this one is quite interesting. I'm surprised at how kind of bright and clear this beer is. But yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And obviously with this one, the key moon tea is probably going to play a role, and the bourbon barrels will have affected the colour a little bit. It's quite easy to, affect the colour of these more brown beers with things like that. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. I think we can go on and actually look at the aroma then. So aroma section time. Quite excited about this. Oh, that's interesting. You can certainly smell, when you take the aroma in quite deeply, you get a lot of the wood, a lot of the tea and stuff like this, but you can smell the nice kind of sour brown ale underneath this actually. Calling this a Flanders Red earlier on in the video probably was pretty wrong, to be honest with you. So yeah, Belgian Amber Ale as they're calling it, I think is probably more accurate. Yeah. A lot of places kind of mix, sort of blend the Flanders Red and Oude Bruine styles together. How good it is to do that probably is debatable. But yeah, aroma wise, this is quite nice. You've got a lot of sweetness in there, quite a dry sweetness. You've got a little bit of the kind of sour character as well, and of course you have all the fruitiness and things like that. So it's going to be a really interesting beer, this one. So yeah, let's just break it down and describe it for you a bit more in depth, as we always do. So the backbone of the beer, you've got this lovely smooth American oak in there, and American oak and European oak are different species of tree. The European oak, I think, tends to be a little bit kind of drier almost than the American oak, and probably Australia. I guess in New Zealand you probably have oak trees as well. Whether they are European oak or the seeds being imported and things like that, who knows? But yeah, me probably overthinking about what's going on with this beer. But yeah, you can smell the smooth American oak in this one. There's a wee bit of vanilla in it as well, and you can smell a bit of that bourbon brown sugary character coming out of the beer as well. The spirit layer of the barrel, of course. But yeah, the how would you say, the bourbon layer in this one actually gives the beer that little bit of depth. And as I've often said, bourbon has a little bit more bite to it than the smoothness you'll find from Scotch whisky. But above that, you're starting to get the kind of bready side of the beer actually. So for me, you can smell a little bit of like a fresh brown bready bread crust in there. Of course, the tea leaves are kind of mixing in with all the bready character there. So fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust, sweet brown bread, a little bit of white bread as well in this one. But I'm also getting, if I sugar the beer up a little bit, then I'm definitely getting the brown sugary characters out of this one. It's got a little bit of toasty brown sugar to it, a little bit of a more kind of leathery brown sugar as well. And yeah, toasty brown sugar, leathery brown sugar. And the way that all of that goes together, I think, is it's really quite nice. It's not quite as you do get a bit of straight up caramel in there, and there's a wee bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit, but yeah, mainly toasty biscuity notes, sweet caramel and things like that. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together I think is nice. But yeah, the tea actually becomes more and more prominent in this one the further into the aftertaste you go. The only other thing I could really add about this beer is that it shows you just a little touch of nuttiness as you go into it as well. So yeah, do we need to say anything more about the kind of malty backbone of this one? There's maybe a wee bit of like woodiness and stuff. You can smell the yeastiness in the back of the nose, but we'll get more of that in the flavour, of course. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer, it's always interesting to talk about the hopping mentality in sour beers, because what they used to do back in the day in Belgium was they would use older hops that had lost a little bit of their acid potency in the sour beers, because they wanted the complexity of the flavour but not for the bitterness to kind of detract from the sourness of the beer. But many modern sour beer brewers that are doing the smoothie sours and stuff like this, they don't bother adding the hops into the beer because they say the fruity character is going to suppress that anyway. So yeah, that's worth talking about in these beers. But this one, you do get a little bit of green component out of it, and it's probably some Hallertau or Tettnang or something like that. Or New Zealand, of course, is one of the biggest producers of hops in the world. So yeah, this one is quite interesting. You do get a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character as well, and then you've got some nice floral aromaticity coming out of this one too, and some big grassy notes. So yeah, the green component in this one is really quite interesting actually. I like how everything goes together with it. Kind of noble in its hoppy character, which is what you expect of an Oude Bruine, a Belgian Oude Bruine. We have to remember this is a Belgian beer style. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of things and the sort of tart side of things as well. So we know that, was it figs they put in this one, or was it dates? I forget. Yeah, dates that's been added into this one. So yeah, it has, you know, dates are always going to give you that sort of oily pear sultana-like character. So in the fruits, obviously, you're getting a lot of that oily pear, dates, sultanas. There's a little bit of a kind of black curranty note to it as well. Obviously, a kind of sharper, slightly cherryish, raisiny type note on top. And yeah, if you sugar it up, you get more and more of that, actually. So that's pretty interesting in this one. But yeah, the tea is becoming more and more prominent in the aroma the more that I kind of sit there and smell. But yeah, the fruity side of things in this one is quite interesting. I must admit, having smelled the aroma, I'm a little bit apprehensive about this one because I'm not the biggest fan of tea beers. I've had a couple of them, and you know, I just don't drink tea. I was never a great fan of the flavour of it. So we'll just need to see how we get on with this one. But I love the Oude Bruines and the Flanders Red beers. As I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's time to try this one. So yeah, this is Desperate Glory, an 8% Oude Bruine with aged in bourbon barrels with Keemun tea from 8 Wired Brewing in Warkworth, and Small Gods, kind of gypsy brewing project based in Auckland, both of course from New Zealand. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's actually really nice. Not surprised knowing 8 Wire, because these guys were always good, and Small Gods have obviously got a good reputation. But the way everything kind of balances out in this, the tea just kind of sits there at the front of the palate and the aftertaste, and just gives you more complexity. And it actually works quite well with the kind of funkiness. If you think about the funkiness you get from some of these wild ales and sour beers and the kind of lingering dryness it gives you, these tea flavours are actually quite well suited to that blend when I think about it, and you know, having just tried one now. So yeah, I like that about this beer. So I'm just going to say to them, thumbs up. This is quite enjoyable actually. So yeah, let's break this beer down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth and tell you what's going on here. So yeah, we go to the middle third of your palate then with this beer. The backbone of it is that lovely, smooth, kind of American oak in there. As I say, further forward on that, you get the nice little bit of vanilla. And then, yeah, you've got the smooth oaky character in there, the little bit of vanilla. And then, yeah, you have that, as I say, you have that bit of kind of bourbon, toasty, American bourbon brown sugar sitting on top of that from the spirit, and that lingers into the aftertaste too, and you can feel the tea kind of just mixing in with that. Actually, that really is the aftertaste of this beer, is the smooth American oak, the wee bit of vanilla, the bourbon brown sugar, and the wee, yeah, that little touch of vanilla in there. But yeah, I like that about this one. The way it goes together is really quite nice. Yeah, on the bready side of things, or on the malty side of things, then above the kind of bourbon layer, you do get that nice little bit of kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying it's rye bread. It's more like a wholemeal brown bready bread crust. Then above that, yeah, you're getting the wholemeal brown bread on this one. Then above all of that, you have a little bit of an almost white bready character in there, but then yeah, it's all about the brown sugars. So the brown sugars in this one are actually quite bright, I would say, and I think that actually helps accentuate some of the flavours from the tea, which is really interesting. So yeah, above the bready layers, you get this little bit of like toasty brown sugar. So you can feel it's like quite a toasty, bright caramel or something like that. It actually reminds me a wee bit of Scottish tablet. My mum used to make very good tablet. So yeah, toasty, brown sugary character in there. Above that, you get a little bit of a leathery brown sugar, and usually when you get these leathery flavours, it's either a product of the yeast or a slightly longer wort boil. I think it's probably the yeast that's pushing that a little bit. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, slightly leathery brown sugary character. Then in the dead centre of your palate, you're getting that little oily circle in there. So there's a bit of like a fudgy, toffee type flavour in the middle. Then as you move further out from that, it's a wee bit more like Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch. But the brown sugary side of this beer is really nice, but we need to remember that they have added some sugar into this one as an adjunct, so that's worth bearing in mind. Other than that, maybe a very slight nuttiness coming out of the middle of your palate into the aftertaste, but I really don't think we need to say much more about the middle third of your palate, and that's where the majority of the complexity in this beer is. But yeah, remember with your palate that sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, the border, and remember, back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to middle third of your palate too, just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of brown bready character in the base, a little bit of a white bready character almost coming above that, then you get a wee bit of bread crust, but the base of that back third of your palate, you get the drier side of the oak in this one, you get a wee bit of the kind of bourbon brown sugary layer in there, and then yeah, above that you get the wholemeal brown bread, which was a little bit lighter, a little bit taller and more airy, and then yeah, you get a wee bit of the white bready character above that. The tea does feel as if it's kind of infused into both of these layers, and yeah, they just feel a little bit drier, and you can feel some of the brown sugary characters, the drier side of the brown sugar, just kind of creeping over the top of that actually. So yeah, the way everything sort of pieces together in this beer, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, on the yeasty side of things, then the yeasty side of the beer obviously appears on the top of the back third of your palate. So the yeasty side of the beer for me is quite nice in this one. At the centre, it feels like it's a bit more of a kind of crusty, but slightly sweet wholemeal brown bread. Around the edge of that, you get a little bit of a more white bready sort of thing out of it, and then yeah, you've got a bit of bread crust just around the very edge of it. So definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of squashes down and condenses down together actually. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, malty, yeasty and adjuncty side of this beer is pretty good actually. So the green component in this one, obviously we talked about that earlier, and you can feel that some of it has dropped out of the beer, and obviously the tea, I think, is kind of the sort of flavour you get from the tea kind of amplifies that effect almost, or it makes it feel as if it's more than it is. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. You've got a good little bit of a kind of herbal and woody note to it. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, a nice little bit of floral aromaticity. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit more sort of grassy actually as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, green component. But still, the grassiness does give you a little touch of zestiness as well. So you have the nice woody, earthy herbal notes to blend in with the barrel and the tea and stuff. Then yeah, you just have the bit of the more grassy floral note that goes along with the sour side of the beer. So yeah, let's look at the front third of the palate then, and the fruity sour side of things. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. Wholemeal brown bread in the base, the white bread on the top, and a wee bit of the bread crust above that. But yeah, the base of the front third of your palate is more, you get the nice kind of oaky, the oaky wood in the base, a bit of the bourbon, the kind of brown bready characters, the white bread, and then a wee bit of the leathery sort of brown sugar sitting on top of that. So yeah, On top of that, you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the hoppy side of the beer. And for me, the fruity side of things, is quite nice. The beer does have a wee bit of a raisiny, say it's more raisins. It has a wee bit of raisiny sharpness when you take it in. But if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you do get that sort of, you can feel the datey character in this one. And dates, it's that, but the dates at the back, and it gives you a more oily pear and sultana type flavour as you come further forward. There's a wee touch of a red figgy character in the middle, then almost a wee slight touch of blackcurrant as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate. But then, yeah, the sharper fruity side of things with this one, the sharp kind of impact flavours from the sour side of the beer aren't too aggressive either, they're quite nice. But yeah, you just get a little bit of that sharper impact behind the front tip of your tongue, and it is just like a little bit of a kind of almost raisiny sharpness that comes out of it. So you get that just behind the front tip of your tongue. It rolls in and then it just mellows out really nicely and mixes in with the sort of date and sultana type flavours that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, this is a really nice beer, this one actually. It's quite dangerous because it's easy to drink and it's 8%. It covers its alcohol very, very well actually, I have to say that with this one. And it's really not that kind of acidic at all. It's not overly sour. This has just got a nice little bit of kind of sour funky character to it, I would say. So yeah, that is a really interesting one. I've got a very good impression now of I've been given a very good first impression of 8 Wired's barrel program. So we'll need to look a little bit more at that and see what we can find. So yeah, I think we can round off this review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, very clean beer, this one. It's just really easy to drink. So yeah, really nice, clean, easy to drink beer, this one. There's a little touch of oily slickness to it, which I think is great. And yeah, just a little touch of the bubble from the carbonation in there. But yeah, the malty base of this beer, you can feel, gives you a little bit. The barrel gives you a bit of dryness underneath. There's a smoothness in the middle in there, then the kind of drier sweetness on top. The IBU of this beer will be quite low, sort of 10, 15 IBUs at most. I would say probably about 10. The fruitiness is really nice in this one as well. Not too much in the way of sour character, but like I say, a very clean, slightly slick and wet mouthfeel to this one. I think this is really good. I've really enjoyed reviewing this one, and certainly cool to introduce Small Gods and return to 8 Wired after quite some time. So yeah, this isn't your big kind of typical sweet Flanders Red, this one. It really is more of a kind of smooth, leathery Oude Bruine with a wee bit of tea flavour coming out of it. Really good stuff. Really enjoyed this one. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Desperate Glory, an 8% Oude Bruine aged in bourbon barrels with Keeman tea from 8 Wired in Warkworth, and Small Gods, a gypsy brewery kind of based in Auckland, both from New Zealand. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both 8 Wired and Small Gods, and we'll see about returning to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.